You know, there are a number of reasons Christopher Redondo has had at least 8 different attorneys and been seen by roughly a dozen psychologists and psychiatrists to determine whether or not he's competent to stand trial. Throw in the fact prosecutors are seeking the death penalty, and that slowed down the legal process even more. It's been a long, painful journey for the family of Gilbert Police Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler. Shuhandler was killed in the line of duty January 28, 2010, when he was shot during a traffic stop near Val Vista and Baseline Road in Gilbert. 44-year-old Christopher Redondo is the man detectives say pulled the trigger, but he's never been convicted of the killing because his case has never gone to trial. Until now. Redondo's murder trial gets underway this week in Phoenix.
My husband was killed in the line of duty 10 years ago.
Angela Harrell is president of the 100 Club of Arizona and knows the pain of losing a loved one. But the thought of Shuhandler's family sitting through a murder trial 9 years later will be heartbreaking.
I can't imagine a greater challenge. You're looking at the person that took your life that was once whole, and now it's in pieces, and you've spent so many years putting that back together, and now you have to look at that individual again, hoping that the court is they're going to side with you and your family, and these people will pay for the acts that they've done.
One of the accomplices in the murder, Damian Irizarry, has already been sentenced to life in prison for driving the getaway car and leading police on a 50-mile high-speed chase after Shuhandler was shot. But getting Redondo's case to court has taken longer because of questions about his competency and the fact prosecutors are seeking the death penalty.
Then you got a death penalty phase.
Phoenix criminal defense attorney Dwayne Cates tells us when it takes this long for a case to get to trial, it presents a number of challenges.
You can have witnesses die, you can have police officers retire, get killed, move. I mean, you never know if the same set of witnesses that you started with, that you'll have them at the end when a case gets this old.
Legal experts tell me that when cases like this are delayed this long, it often favors the defendants, but the feeling here is that there is enough evidence to get a conviction. The big question in this case is Redondo's competency and whether or not that will be an issue during the trial or after it's over. Reporting live in downtown Phoenix, Jason Berry for Arizona.
Really fun guy. Everyone loved him. He had a great sense of humor.
Gilbert Police Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler dedicated his life to serve and protect his community and to being the best dad. Meredith and her sister Nicole were just little girls when their hero was killed in the line of duty.
I think of him in big moments, and I'll feel his presence.
Lieutenant Shuhandler was gunned down during a routine traffic stop in Gilbert 14 years ago this month. Christopher Redondo pulled the trigger. 9 years later, Redondo was sentenced to life in prison. Meredith was 22 years old at the time.
That was hard. I think a lot of people were waiting for closure for the trial to at least come and then finish.
Last Friday, Redondo died in prison at the age of 49. The Arizona Department of Corrections confirming the news on Tuesday, but Meredith got word of what happened right away.
The world is a better place without him in it, and that was a good feeling. I don't really think anything can bring closure, I would say, but it's definitely puts me at a sense of relief and peace.
With a lighter heart, Meredith is holding on to her father's love that never left and will continue to keep his memory alive.
I think we honor him every day just by talking about him and thinking of him often and just doing things to make him proud.
The Arizona Department of Corrections has not released Redondo's cause of death. Reporting live in studio, Casey Torres, Arizona's Family.
Casey, thanks so much.
But first, a hero in our community taken in an instant and finding justice a slow, painful pursuit.
But tonight, nearly a decade after Gilbert Police Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler was killed, the man who shot him sentenced to life in prison.
ABC 15's Zach Crenshaw spoke with jurors and witnesses, and Zach, the family was hoping for more than today's outcome.
Yeah, the family was hoping for the death penalty too. And according to one juror, the majority of them were as well. She told me that 6 jurors were in favor of the death penalty. She said 3 were undecided or indifferent, and another 3 were against the death penalty altogether. Ultimately, it was these 3 holdouts that got their way, and Redondo was sentenced to life in prison. Before a decision was reached, things got heated.
We argued, we threw things, we, fought with each other over this.
Lisa Lermer was one of 12 jurors who sentenced Christopher Redondo to life in prison. She wanted the death penalty.
Justice was not served.
On January 28, 2010, Christopher Redondo shot and killed Gilbert Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler during a traffic stop.
I remember that night very vividly.
Michael Clark and his friends witnessed the shooting from a nearby Taco Bell and rushed to help the lieutenant.
He started choking and breathing, and so we rushed over to him, got on his shoulder radio, and called in for help.
Officer down, officer down!
Redondo and driver Damian Irizarry were arrested after a long high-speed chase. Irizarry sentenced to 107 years in prison. Michael actually testified recently at Redondo's trial.
We thought it was a done and over with case.
Both men will now spend their lives in prison.
I hope that this gives everyone closure.
While it provides closure to some, Lisa has a message for Lieutenant Shuhandler's daughters and loved ones.
I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get there.
It took this long to get this case before a jury because Christopher Redondo wasn't declared mentally competent to stand trial until now. He does have a right to appeal this verdict. Zach Crenshaw, ABC 15, Arizona.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, unanimously find that Christopher Angel Redondo should be sentenced to life.
Our other big story tonight, a convicted cop killer will spend the rest of his life behind bars for murdering Gilbert Police Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler.
A jury in Maricopa County handed down the life sentence today in front of Shuhandler's family and friends. But as Team 12's Ryan Cody is telling us, it is not the outcome they were looking for.
Well, life sentence does not give the family closure in this case because Redondo is already serving a life sentence for a separate murder back in 2009. Family and friends now pushing for the death penalty, and several jurors disappointed they couldn't make it happen. Hugs, but no smiles outside the Maricopa County Superior Courthouse.
Justice was not served.
Lisa Lerma is one of the jurors finding Christopher Redondo guilty of murdering Gilbert Police Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler in 2010. But Lerma says deciding between the death penalty or life in prison tore this jury apart.
We, fought with each other over this. There was 6 for the death penalty, 3 undecided, and 3 lives. And we ended up with life, and I don't know how we got there.
Redondo, who is already serving a life sentence for a separate murder, not even present to hear his own sentence.
Redondo.
The judge throwing him out of the courtroom after a profanity-laced tirade.
Good day, Mr. Redondo. Counsel, based upon Mr. Redondo's language, I found and I continue to find that he has voluntarily absented himself from proceedings.
This was not his first murder. We found out he murdered prior to this. How can we just give him life? I don't understand it.
Lerma and others outside the courthouse say one juror in particular, keeping Redondo off death row.
My personal opinion, she did not like police officers. Yeah, and they all knew.
Redondo will now be serving his second life sentence for a second murder conviction. His defense attorneys will be back in court for a couple weeks as they hear sentencing on several other charges, including aggravated assault and drive-by shooting. We're live in Phoenix tonight. Ryan Cody, 12 News at 10.
Prior to this week's sentencing, Redondo was already serving a life sentence for another crime, the murder of Ernie Singh. Ashley DiMartino spoke with Singh's family. They were hoping that the jury would come back with the death penalty.
Ernie Singh's family is still heartbroken, especially with the recent news of the life in prison sentence for Christopher Redondo.
It was such an awful tragedy that we lost him. But when I saw this on TV, it brought everything back.
In 2009, Ernie Singh was shot in the face outside his home in Miami, Arizona. At the time, Singh's family told Arizona's family that Redondo was jealous of a relationship that Singh's brother had with Redondo's wife. In 2012, Redondo pleaded guilty to murder of Singh and was given a life in prison sentence.
It's not right. Justice was not served.
Singh's sister Maria says she still is feeling this tragedy and says her family will never get closure.
My mother just passed away March 1st, and she never got closure on my brother. I think that's what killed my mom, her depressed, and that was her baby.
Ashley DiMartino for Arizona's Family.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lake Gang TV. We're going to be going to Arizona for this one, guys. We're going to be talking about the murder of a Gilbert, Arizona police officer. His murderer, or I should say murderers, and the fallout from this case and everything that happened with it. The officer went by the name of Eric Shuhandler, who was a 16-year veteran of the Gilbert, Arizona PD. His murderer was a guy by the name of Christopher Redondo, a career criminal. And, you know, it went crazy pretty fast. The guy that was with him was Damian Urizari. And we're going to be going all the way back to January 28th, 2010. Christopher Redondo is involved with Damian Urizari in a traffic stop. And he basically did it right in front of a lot of witnesses. A guy by the name of Michael Clark, who was at a Taco Bell with his friends when Redondo shot Officer Shuhandler, they rushed over, were calling out for help, and they actually grabbed his shoulder radio and were able to call out for help. And you can hear in that news article or the news clip I played where they're saying, "Officer down, officer down." What's crazy about this story is two things. The reason I picked this is because we had an update a few months ago. Is, you know, the murder happens in 2010. Well, Redondo doesn't go to trial. And remember how I talked about in my last video, the wheels of justice, how slow they turn. This is the same thing, right? He doesn't go to trial and found guilty until 2019, so almost a decade. The family waited for justice. There were questions about his mental competency, and because they wanted the death penalty. So a lot of times in these cases, what prosecutors will do is they will ask the family, you know, hey, one, you can't do anything about it if the guy wants to take it to trial, right? The guy wants to go to trial, can't do anything about it. Your family, as loved ones, you're gonna have to sit through the trial, and you're gonna have to hear all the nasty details, all the gory details. But then after the trial, when you're dealing with high-profile murder cases and possible death penalty cases, it's what's called the penalty phase. And a lot of times with the penalty phase, the prosecutors will, unless they make the decision, you know, for everybody to go, I don't care what anybody says, we're going after the death penalty. But a lot of times the prosecutors will ask the family of the loved ones or the family of the murder victim and say, hey, you know, do you want to go through this again? Because basically you have to sit through almost another trial, listening to arguments, listening to his lawyers make him sound, you know, like a good human being, and putting up his third grade picture and tell you how his parents abandoned him and why he doesn't deserve to die, even though he pumped, you know, 3 or 4 bullets into their dad or their husband or their son or nephew or brother. You know, it's just a process that wears people out on both sides, even the loved ones for the accused. So he gets convicted in 2019, but the family does decide, yep, we're going to go through the death penalty phase. And in a lot of states, you have to have a unanimous decision. All right. Not a majority, like a unanimous decision to put somebody to death. Not all states are like that. I think Louisiana, if I remember correctly, I want to say you can just have a majority. I could be wrong. Comment down below, and comment down below if there's any other states you know of where the death penalty rules aren't majority. And in this case, I got the exact numbers. It was 6 people voted in favor, 3 were undecided, and you had 3 people that were just outright no way. And that's what is. It's really hard to get somebody. I will say it's not that easy to give somebody the death penalty. Texas, maybe a little bit easier. Texas, man, they got like an express lane for the death penalty. But other states, it's pretty hard because it only takes. When you have to have a full unanimous verdict, it only takes one person to go, I don't care what he did or she did, I'm not voting to kill somebody. And in this case, there were a few people that voted that way. So co-defendant, so he basically gets sentenced to life, okay? Life, no parole, done, all right? And another reason the family was upset is because Christopher Redondo was already doing another life sentence for the murder of another guy that happened in 2009, that happened 7 months before the killing of, of Officer, of Shuhandler. So Eric Shuhandler gets murdered. Well, so then you got Christopher Redondo that gets life for the murder. Well, he's already getting life for another murder he did 7 months before. So the family's like, that's why they were going after the death penalty. Like, you give him another life sentence for our loved ones for this. He killed a cop. It doesn't really matter. He doesn't care. He really doesn't. Co-defendant Damien Irizarry, convicted and sentenced to life as well. He got like 100+ years. And he got 100 years in prison. He was found guilty. 8 counts of aggravated assault, 4 counts of drive-by shooting, and 1 count of unlawful flight in connection, basically unlawful flight to avoid prosecution because, and his exact sentence was 107.5 years in prison. Well, at the time, Irizarry claims he was an unarmed, innocent bystander the time of his arrest. And why the flight to avoid prosecution is because they were in Damien Irizarry's work truck and they took off on a 50-mile high-speed chase after the shooting, all right? And Shuhandler was 42 at the time. And basically the only reason they got stopped was for an obstructed license plate. And Officer Shuhandler got shot in the head. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They all went to trial. They all lost, right? Redondo was charged with first-degree murder, drive-by shooting, aggravated assault. But like I said, he was already in prison for serving a life sentence without the chance of parole. In 2009, he murdered a guy by the name of Ernie Singh 7 months before he killed Officer Eric Shuhandler. And what's interesting, okay, is in his first murder case with the murder that happened in 2009 with Ernie Singh, Redondo pleaded guilty in that case. And then it talked about his criminal past. He'd already spent time in prison in 2005 and 2008 for charges out of Gila County for abuse, aggravated harassment, aggravated assault, and marijuana violation. So, yeah, the guy had a history. The guy was dangerous. And it's pretty crazy. Now, Redondo did try to kind of get out of this. So in an article I'm going to read to you guys, it says, the motive for killing a Gilbert police officer was apparently fear. According to a court document released, Christopher A. Redondo, 35 years old, invoked his right to silence after the shooting death of Lieutenant Eric Shuhandler and an ensuing 50-mile car chase and shootout on January 28, 2010. But he kept making spontaneous statements, according to the court document. The motive for killing a Gilbert police officer was apparently fear, according to the document. Christopher A. Redondo, he invoked his right to silence, but he kept, like they said, he kept making like random statements. So the document, known as a probable cause statement, made public for the first time, gave a bunch of details about the shooting. Redondo, the suspected gunman, was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated assault. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office plans to seek the death penalty against Redondo. The suspected driver, Damien Irizarry, was charged with aggravated assault and unlawful flight from a law enforcement vehicle. Now, when this happened, it upset the community a ton. You see the pictures I put up. Thousands of people were mourning the loss of him. He had 2 daughters, an ex-wife who was actually a cop at the time. You see in that picture, she's an officer. So yeah, anytime a cop's killed, and don't get me wrong, again, I've said this in other videos, I do not take a side. I do not take a side. I believe police are needed and they do provide safety to the public and something that we need. I also believe that there are a lot of bad police as well. I don't think there's just 1 or 2. I think there is a lot of corruption in law enforcement. I think there's a lot of guys that have a power complex that the minute they get the gun and the badge, they think they're better than people. I think there's a lot of racism that goes on. But I also think there's a lot of good police officers and people that love their families and love the job and really do want to make a difference. And in this case, I will say, I read through a lot of this. I never saw anything related to Officer Eric Shuhandler that said he was in any way a bad cop or an unfair cop or somebody that was racist. There was nothing about complaints. And he'd been around 16 years. So if there was something out there, I would have been able to find it. So I will say that. And given the fact that the defendant, Christopher Redondo, had a violent criminal history and a mental health disorder, and there's one other thing we're going to get to in a minute. I'll kind of surprise you guys with this. Pretty crazy what I read. So I will say in this one, I do feel like the cop was innocent and didn't, he was murdered. So anyway, Israel Redondo had visited friends in Chandler, Arizona, and left in Redondo's truck sometime after 9 p.m. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. I said that it was Irizarry's. I'm sorry, I said that it was Irizarry's truck. No, it was Redondo's work truck. So I misspoke about that earlier. Irizarry happened to be driving because Redondo had an injury to his hand. All right. So Eric Shuhandler pulled the truck over at 10:42 p.m. January 28th, 2010 for an obstructed license plate. They pulled into a parking lot at the southeast corner of Val Vista Drive and Baseline Road. Shuhandler asked for records check for Irizarry and Christopher Redondo. Shuhandler asked dispatchers to check similarly spelled names for warrants because Redondo seemed unhappy with him. So it seems like he gave the wrong name at first. And then he gave a correct name. Shuhandler asked dispatchers to check similarly spelled names. Oh, and because Redondo was upset with him. Dispatchers found a possible match, and Shuhandler asked for backup at 10:51 p.m. because he was going to get Redondo out of the truck. A minute later, there were garbled sounds from Shuhandler's open microphone. Some Taco Bell customers, that's the Michael Clark, the guy I told you about that ran over and helped him and grabbed his shoulder radio, called for help, saw a police officer standing at the passenger side of the truck as they were leaving the restaurant, and then they heard a gunshot. 2 Mesa police sergeants across the street also heard the shots. Irizarry denied knowing there was a gun in the truck and denied possessing a gun or shooting Shuhandler, who was shot in the head. Damien Irizarry stated he was looking in his side view mirror when he heard a pow, the documents read. He panicked and drove away as Christopher yelled at him to go. In Shuhandler's waistband was Irizarry's driver's license, and on the ground in his blood was Redondo's insurance card, which spelled his last name as Redondo. So Redondo just added an A to his actual last name and gave that out because obviously he didn't want anybody to know his past. Maybe he had a warrant out, and it made Officer Shuhandler pretty suspicious. And I think Redondo, who's a career criminal and been in the system and knows how things go, picked up on the suspicion of Officer Shuhandler, and he panicked and he made a decision. A Gilbert, Arizona police officer spotted the truck at Higley and Baseline Roads, and Redondo fired 2 more rounds at them, striking the police car in the radiator. Damien Irizarry told detectives that he called Redondo's father and business partner and asked them to meet in Globe as police chased them on the US 60 heading toward the town. He also called his own father, who encouraged him to pull over. Irizarry's father and Redondo's family told police Redondo had become increasingly distrustful of police since he got out of prison in 2008, and he had become increasingly violent, especially toward animals. So weird. It has already said Redondo climbed into the back of the truck and began throwing things out of the back. A police car became disabled when it hit an air compressor. The officer, so he was throwing, basically because it sounds like he's doing some construction work. And, good Lord, threw an air compressor out of the truck and managed to disable a police car. Then and it said before he shot at a police car and hit it in the radiator. I'm like, guy's got pretty good aim. I'll give him that. The officer pulled over and found a revolver on the roadside among the objects that had been tossed out. Redondo's father told police he kept a .357 revolver in the truck and his son knew about it. Man, and his son had also recently gotten another handgun. After the truck came to a stop at Apple Valley Road in US 60 in Pinal County, the men took cover at the front of the truck. Police got into a gunfight with Redondo and wounded both men. Police found the father's revolver where the chase ended. Man. Crazy. Oh, and what I was going to say. Redondo sent a text message at 9:21 p.m. to Damien Irizarry's father that he found, that Damien's father found odd, and this is what it read in all caps. Keep it gangster, end quote, and quote, let the bullets spit no love, end quote. That is hard, man. That is hard. The chase did end when they ran out of gas. All right. Crazy. Just, and I don't think Damien Irizarry was innocent. No, I think he knew damn well that Redondo was going to do something. I think he saw Redondo pulling the gun out, and I don't think Damien Irizarry did anything to try and stop him. But in the comments below, I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from you on what level of responsibility do you carry if you're, as someone who's had a past and who's rolled around with people who've had guns on them, and I've rolled around with people with guns and drugs and certain things that I knew, and I've had drugs on me and stuff. I never carried a gun, but I used to carry. I did my thing out there, and I just feel like if you're in a car with somebody and you guys are up to no good, you guys are doing something, you know what people have, you know what's going to go on, and there's no way that if we're getting pulled over and I see a buddy pulling a gun out, he's not stupid. He knows what's going to happen. So I was looking in my side mirror and heard a pow, and I left scared. And that's what he said, too, that he kind of tried to play it off like not only was he scared of the situation, but he became scared of Redondo because he didn't know what he was going to do. It's like, no, man, you knew what was going to happen. You knew what was going on, and you tried to get away, and you didn't get away. Really quick, Christopher Redondo, born July 24th, 1974, sentenced to life in the Department of Corrections for the murder. Man, just absolutely crazy. The pickup they were in was a 1990 Ford pickup. Like I said, it was, and I misspoke in the beginning, but it was Redondo's father. But he wasn't driving. Redondo wasn't driving because he had an injury to the hand. That's why Damien Irizarry drove. Yeah, very sad. 50-mile vehicle chase. That's a long ways. 50 miles is like, dude, that's a long chase. Very lucky more people didn't get hurt. Lucky more people didn't get carjacked or ran off the road. They were shooting at the cops, throwing things out of the truck. That's intense. So anyway, there you guys have it. Very crazy case. Just, it updated. And I will finish with this. The reason I chose this is because a few months ago, Christopher Redondo was found dead. He died in prison. He passed away. And what a way to end. It happened here in 2024, I believe in February 2024. And it just absolutely crazy way to end the story. And he died at the end of January 2024, so almost into February. He was 49 years old when he died. He died at Lewis Prison in Buckeye on January 26th, according to the Arizona Department of Corrections. So there it is, the icing on the cake. And just what a way to go. What a story. Pretty sad all the way around. Officer Shuhandler leaves behind 2 daughters, an ex-wife, sisters, brothers, mom and dad were still alive. So all really sad, guys. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you for all the love, all the support. Till next time, see ya.